What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with the summer gaming event season now on, with Sony doing their State of Play and then Summer Game Fest tomorrow and then Xbox over the weekend, there's still one company that people are curious about, and that's Nintendo. Well, wouldn't you know it, multiple reports have now come out detailing this Nintendo Direct and even kind of whittling it down to a certain day, but we'll go over all of that stuff here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony, and as people have noted and talked about, when is the PlayStation 5 generation going to get started? Well, there is an interesting graph that kind of shows those people aren't necessarily off, especially when it comes to Sony's first-party sales. And then we also have 007 First Light. Seems like it's off and running here with initial sales being strong. But Amazon, MGM, had some concerning stuff to say about the future of what I figured was going to end up being a gaming franchise, but we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. It's already out on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, but the Switch 2 version had to be delayed. We assumed a few months. There were some concerns that it might end up in 2027 and wait almost like 8 months or something. Does not appear to be the case, as we do have a release date now. This was shown in a new trailer, and this is coming out September 18th. So good news there, not like a crazy long delay, but this is something we've been seeing, of course, since the Switch 2 came out, where third-party games will at times have to hold out and wait a few months for the Switch 2 version specifically. I'd like to see that cleaned up as we get further into the Switch 2 generation, like starting like as soon as like next year. We shouldn't really be hearing about that with third-party releases, as I know dev kits, it was discussed that those went out a bit late for many different studios and publishers for the Switch 2 specifically, but I kind of feel like, all right, they should have caught up by now, and going into 2027, we shouldn't hear about a Switch 2 version happening 6 months later or something. I mean, the new Tomb Raider game that was shown at the State of Play, that's coming out in February, and all of a sudden the Switch 2 logo is next to all the other ones. Makes me think that game, which was supposed to come out in 2026, was going to have a similar situation where the Switch 2 version would have come out months later, but they just ended up delaying the whole game anyway, and there you go, day and date. Here's hoping that ends up just being a consistent trend now as we go into 2027. Also, WWE 2K26 got a pretty big update with one character in particular being added that's making a lot of headlines because, as you can see over at Insider Gaming, it's Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick. Yes, you can technically beat him up if you want in WWE 2K26. Looks like he has, what is that, a 77 overall rating. He has specific commentary for him, so I guess when you're in the ring, the announcers will have special lines for him. And then he even has his own entrance theme. I didn't see anything about what his finisher is exactly. I can only assume it's a delayed suplex. I think that'd be very fitting there. I mean, look, it's just fun. It's a video game. You know, you're going to have these kind of tongue-in-cheek fun moments. And, I mean, kind of, I guess, him being a good sport about it. So, it kind of reminds me a bit about, like, NBA Jam back in the day, where you had all kinds of random things. Yes, mascots, but also, remember you used to have all the, like, former presidents and stuff in there? So that was always really weird and wacky. But again, it's a video game. It kind of plays into it, and this is something that WWE 2K has done for quite some time. So, I don't know, fun update. Just wanted to throw it out there in case you're wondering, and wanted to go, I guess, beat up Strauss Zelnick in WWE. Oh, and we did get the cover athlete for Madden 27. You can see this is over on the Chicago Bears account. Yep, it's Caleb Williams. Okay, so there's two covers here. I know they do different covers, I believe, for like the big special edition or something. So I kind of feel like the one on the right, maybe that's for the special. I think that one actually looks pretty good. The one where he's jumping, I don't know. It for some reason I look at it and I go, this looks photoshopped. I mean, obviously there's Photoshop used for both. That one just seems really obvious of them just kind of like pasting him on like a blue gradient background. But either way, there you go. Caleb Williams, I mean, he had a very exciting season, so yeah, it kind of fits there. The only concern, of course, for Chicago Bears fans, the Madden curse. We'll see what happens here, because Caleb Williams is certainly on the upswing right now after his last season. Very, very exciting moments. So I guess the idea was he would build on that, but that Madden curse, I mean, sports, 80% mental, that's probably not making things much better there. Although I'm sure it made his wallet a lot better. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and a Direct that is currently being rumored, and based on the sourcing here, I think most people are going to go, yeah, that's probably a thing. Okay, so right now we have two different main sources around when this direct is going to happen, okay? One is indeed Nate the Hate. He shared this in a podcast that he posted yesterday morning, and he sort of detailed this, like his predictions, the idea of a direct happening, and he talked a bit about third-party stuff even at Summer Games Fest that I was seeing, but obviously people are wondering, look, we have the outline right now in front of us for what would normally be like an E3 time, the State of Play that had happened, the Summer Game Fest that is tomorrow, and then we have the Xbox show on Sunday, so as we've seen in the past, Nintendo would go last. We kind of figured if there was going to be a direct, it would be next week. Now, Nate did mention months ago that Nintendo was not going to have a full general direct until June, and it seems like that is playing out as he said. I mean, we've had like a Star Fox direct, but not the big general, and technically he told us about the Star Fox direct as well, so you kind of get the idea of when he says something like this, people go, okay, yeah. Probably going to see that direct next week, as that is what he said in his show. And then alongside of that, Jeff Grubb did share on his show that he's hearing the 9th. So next Tuesday. And again, it all kind of works out and it makes sense just based on what we've seen traditionally from Nintendo. Some years are different from others, and that's one of the reasons it was so much easier when there was indeed an E3, because you could kind of look and pencil everything in and you're okay, this is sort of what we can expect because this is when E3 is. Technically, Nintendo could have their direct 2 weeks from now. They could have it right at the end of June, they could have it at the beginning of July. They could have had it in May. So that's the one thing where it makes it a little harder to sort of figure this out and line it up. But I do think next week makes a lot of sense. It's kind of what I was figuring, as well as many other people. Although there were rumors going around that a direct could have happened today. Seemed like it would have been a bit crowded on that end. Now, I did see some say, well, next week is when the World Cup stuff starts. And you're right, because that, I assume that means that there is a new Mario Strikers happening. Now, that'd actually be pretty cool if Nintendo did that, because the last one, not great for the online, specifically the idea of going online with 4 people. Like, it was a whole thing. But, I mean, they may as well capitalize on the World Cup stuff. So that's just a fun little speculative piece to put out there. No, Tuesday, though, is now when I am expecting a direct to happen. And I guess that means they would announce it on Monday. I have thought about the idea of them announcing it maybe a little earlier, as soon as today. But, I mean, Monday, they give you like 24 hours notice. It happens Tuesday morning, and then we're off and running what I would assume, all kinds of things to start setting up the rest of this year. But also, Nintendo does know, obviously, that they are raising the price of the Switch 2 in Japan. And we'll look at some of those numbers that should be coming out here today, I feel like, from Famitsu, to see what kind of a drop-off they have now with it being more expensive in Japan. But also in the US, that'll be happening in September. This is where I think they also need to talk about some more long-term projects that they know are happening. All right, so Ocarina of Time remake, that is something that has been thrown around quite a bit. Nate, of course, that's like the last big thing I think that he has out there that hasn't necessarily been announced yet. So if that's there, but then they also go, you know what? We will tell you about the next big 3D Mario that is happening for 2027. And they give you another look at Pokemon and maybe a few other things sprinkled in there. And then, of course, I figure more than usual in terms of third party, just because we see the Switch 2 just get more games from third parties. I think they could have a really good direct. And I feel like now more than ever, Nintendo does need it just to keep momentum going for what is only going to be a more expensive, but the most expensive system they've ever tried to sell. So I guess keep an eye out to see if Nintendo wants to make that announcement sooner rather than later, or I guess we'll wait until Monday for them to make the announcement for Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday. That's the thing. Right now, it's Jeff Grubb who said Tuesday, so Nate just said next week. Technically could happen at any point then, so I guess we'll keep an eye out for it. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their first-party sales, because typically first-party games for a platform holder is what defines that system, gives it an identity, and I know exclusives have been a hot-button topic, but let's face it, it's been the tried-and-true method, dating back to when consoles first really showed up, when, like, the NES was being sold with Super Mario Brothers. It worked. You want to play Mario Brothers, you get the NES. Now, though, it's a bit more, I guess, blurred in terms of exclusivity, with PC being thrown in the mix, but Nintendo sticks with it. Microsoft is like, right now. They're not, it seems like they're back and forth. Are they going to go back to exclusives or are they not? I think they're sticking with their PC releases. Sony, though, appears to be backtracking, like according to reports. But here's the thing. their first-party software is not heading in the right direction currently throughout this generation. And you can see over on GameFile, Stephen Totillo went back and was going through a bunch of these fiscal year reports. And it's interesting when you put it on a line, like a line graph here, because you can see it's, again, not going in the correct direction. Because, so you go back to fiscal year 20, here's the issue, and I'm glad he pointed this out in his report. That's going to be a skewed data point, okay? Because that was the time period where people were inside with all the COVID stuff happening, and we saw across the board, we all recognize this, there was a massive spike in consumer spending outright, but certainly for entertainment. And the PlayStation, of course, would be a central hub for that, along with Nintendo and Microsoft, and they were. So I kind of want to remove that from the equation, if I could there. So still, with that out of there, I mean, you can see it's a clear decline. And these are just the first party game sales to consider. So of course people are like, well, what's going on here? Well, there's a few things. One, I think it's pretty obvious. Sony hasn't been releasing as many first party games as they were, years and years ago. It has slowed down a bit. And I think part of that is that they don't have like an overwhelming amount of studios. And when they did the live service push and that bet and put Naughty Dog on Last of Us Online, they had Ben Studio work on some kind of like live service thing that didn't work out, and like Blue Point was trying to do this God of War multiplayer kind of live service game. You have these longer development times, restart. You have some studios just shut down. Others are like, hey, we'll see you on the PlayStation 6, I guess. And that's how you end up with, yes, a first-party sales chart that looks this way. Especially as you go throughout the generation, that's not good because you have more and more systems out there. Think about it. Sony right now should be going crazy with first-party software because there are like 95 million or so PlayStation 5 systems out in the wild. This is when you capitalize on the entire way of building up the install base. Even if you had to lose money on the system originally, the idea was to get to the end of the generation and just sell tons of software there for a few years. So Sony is mostly relying on third parties with their 30% cut for all the games that are sold on the PlayStation platform, but naturally you make more money on 100% with your first party offerings. And there's also the idea that they don't necessarily rely on third parties exclusively because you can't necessarily control them completely and their own ups and downs. And this is something Sony is really going to have to think on going into the PlayStation 6 generation. It does make me feel like we're going to see a lot of cross-gen. Cross-gen with that PlayStation 5 is going to be around for a long, long time. I mean, we're going to be mid-2030s, probably. Like, we'll go an entire other generation with the PS5 still being very active. It's like we see the PS4 logo sometimes. Still, it happens. But not really, it's kind of an afterthought. It's just like last gen. But I think the PS5 is going to be around a lot. Like, we'll be on the PS4 cycle currently with the PS5, and you'll still see logos consistently. And I mean, if you have a PS5 and you're happy with it, you're probably happy to hear that. But it does make me realize, wow, we are diminishing returns, longer generations, less innovation, and first-party games coming out of Sony that aren't necessarily hitting the highs they need for the budgets they command. So a lot of stuff to figure out going into that PlayStation 6 generation. Next up, let's talk about 007 First Light and the future of what seemed like was being set up as a video game franchise. Rebooting Bond so that you can run with this franchise for, I think, several iterations, similar to how IO has handled their Hitman series. Well, we can see, this is over on Polygon, and they had an interview with Jeff Gaddis, who's the GM of gaming at Amazon, okay? Says he didn't have the full rights to this First Light James Bond game, okay? And the sequels will be done by MGM and theoretically by Amazon Game Studios. Quote, we did not make First Light. We do have a stake in it because we now own the IP, but that IP acquisition happened after the First Light IO deal was already done. We do see this continued integration of video and movies and video games where that line is becoming much more blurry. We think there's a real opportunity for us to create IP that extends or kind of expands upon TV shows and movies. So there'll be a Tomb Raider TV show on Prime Video that'll go alongside the games. there's a lot of things we have in the works on new games that'll relate to Prime Video IP. And of course, he names Tomb Raider. We know there's 2 other Tomb Raider games that are coming out, right? He says this is where we've kind of made some bets on first-party content. So first of all, 007 First Light. Like, we need a follow-up to that. I mean, that's, if you play through it, it's pretty obvious. That's the Bond origin story. And the next one, we'll actually be playing as like full-on 007 James Bond. And I think there's so many things they can do to build on First Light, especially when it comes to, I feel like, gadgets, character progression, and even some of the set pieces. But I just think there is obviously many more stories they can tell. And my concern is that Amazon goes, yeah, it's kind of expensive. What else can we do but cheaper, And that's fine because it's a business and you're trying to make money. But this is a situation where I think the sales potential is quite high for 007, like going forward. People like the IP. So, and it's also very, very well known. So if you have a high quality product like a 007 First Light, as we hear, it crossed 1.5 million units sold fairly quickly. And now there's word that it's actually up above like 2.25 million now. So I think it's a game that will sell very, very well throughout the year into the holiday season. And it wouldn't shock me if you hear about several million copies having sold just in that time period alone. So to me, it feels like IO Interactive has laid the groundwork, and you just got to let them roll along here with it. So I'm hoping Amazon doesn't make any like weird decisions and kind of mess this whole thing up. So either way, we're still years off. I'm hoping like maybe 3 years if they reuse assets and other things they've done here, because that'd be really cool to have a string of Bond games come out every 3 years or so. Again, kind of similar to what they did with the Hitman franchise. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that God of War La Fey game that has certainly been a lightning rod for conversational online. One way or the other, people seem very interested in this thing. And if you look at the views on places like YouTube and the trailers, millions and millions of views. So like the game, it's God of War. It's technically God of War by name. It's gonna sell very well, would be my assumption. But there are some serious concerns right now, and I, of course, see this exploding online, that Kratos is out. Like, Faye is the new main character for the series. Well, like, we can see this. This is over on X, and it's quoting Cory Barlog talking about this in an interview, saying, there's always going to be Kratos games, like, throughout the whole history. We're super excited about that. Oh, for sure, we can't not tell stories about the big guys. They've doubled down on it there, and then triple down here with Sony Santa Monica studio responding to this over on the platform, saying, Kratos is the God of War. We have many more stories to tell with him. For now, we're excited to take fans on a journey into the afterlife of the gods with Faye and hope you'll come along for the ride. So I figured this seemed kind of obvious that this wasn't going to be like the full-on direction for God of War, because like, we have the God of War remake trilogy that is happening. They're remaking the trilogy. This is kind of like them expanding on the lore with Faye. And actually, I mean, if you go through Ragnarok, 2018, obviously her death kicks the entire thing into motion, but then you go through Ragnarok and you learn more about her and her fighting with Thor even. And, like, it's pretty clear they were building her up as a very, very formidable warrior, even fighting with Kratos. So it kind of makes sense that she would then go off. And I mean, I think it's interesting that it's not a prequel, but kind of go off and, yeah, be able to fight her way through, I guess, the afterlife here. And it's interesting because it's running alongside of 2018 and Ragnarok, like in parallel. Although I will say the afterlife and I guess the realm that Kratos and Atreus are in, the time doesn't necessarily have to sync up fully, right? So that's what I'm curious about there as well. But there are still a lot of things that happen in like God of War 2018 that people are like, I wonder if Faye's involved with that now after seeing that, yeah, she still had more story to tell. So that's the thing. We're going to see this, I don't want to say, I guess kind of spin-off, but another angle to the story and lore that will work to build towards, go figure, another God of War game, because it's Sony Santa Monica and they're not doing anything else. And most likely Kratos will be the main character. Who knows, maybe they'll do Atreus and annoy people all over again. But my assumption would be God of War La Fey, that'll be out first half of 2027. The trilogy remake will start up, if it's 3 games or 1, I don't know, we'll see about that too, 2029. And then the next big God of War game will be PlayStation 6, maybe PS5 cross-gen, and be a big thing. And that'll be out in like 2031 or 2032. So yeah, Sony Santa Monica, it's like full on God of War going forward. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how do you primarily watch YouTube? Okay, so the phone and tablet's just 73%. Yeah, that's for the most part how I'll listen to a lot of YouTube videos, and even on PC, I have like laptop that I'll watch while I'm even playing games, and a lot of podcasts and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm kind of right there with you guys. TV though, 14%. That is gaining a lot of momentum. I have heard that people are watching more and more on TV, so I'm curious about that. And then of course PC at 12%. Other, I guess, could be you could be watching on like a game system or something. I don't know, smart fridge. Who knows nowadays? But the reason I was asking is I'm curious if TV is high enough to where, like, I've thought about doing like the show, for example, in 4K. It's mostly comes down to my internet upload speed is pretty bad, and so the bitrate I'd record for 4K is just it take a long time to send it around for editing and other things that Evan will take care of for this show. But if I can get the internet here upgraded, because I think more services are coming in, might make the jump to 4K for the 14% of you on TV. So we'll see if I can make that happen maybe going into next year. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Steve, who says, everyone is delaying their games until early next year. Oh, next because of GTA 6. But what if GTA 6 gets a delay as well? Yeah, that would mess up a lot of plans, because that would also, if you think about it, let's say all these companies are trying to avoid November because GTA 6 is there, but then that moves out of November into, we'll say, March 2027. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of really annoyed people there, but also that'll leave a pretty big like gap in releases for November that many companies would go, we could have been there. I will say, there's got to be someone out there, a studio, a publisher, a developer, someone out there who's like, you know what? We're releasing on the same day as GTA 6. And you know what I would do? I would just do all this cross promotion without them actually participating. You know the thing where these companies, they do like the fan art stuff and they're like, congratulations to this game launching alongside of us. Man, I'm doing all the fan art for GTA 6. Like, oh, congratulations that we're both launching at the same time, and just let the internet do its thing. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about a game that's been ongoing for almost 10 years now and just shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff, giving things big updates away for free in 2026. I did a whole video looking at their latest update, and I'll leave it in a video right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.